So hi everybody, and thank you for watching my video channel for, I'm going to call this the Positive Talk Hour, because there's going to be some really positive talk and some really cool, deep discussions about how we navigate through some what people would perceive as difficult times. I know I call them opportunities. I don't necessarily call them difficult times. But we were I'll just tell you a really funny story. Sherryl was given this great answer, and I forgot to hit the record button. So, you know, we're just going to roll with the punches. So the question I had laid out to her is that there is a lot of things happening in our country, both for people personally as well as socially in our country. And I was just asking her some things that she would give advice to people as how they would navigate through that change. So.
Right. And what I said was, and I will say again, is that for me, the biggest thing is being comfortable with the unknown. If you can get to a place in yourself where you're not always trying to figure it out and, you know, worrying about what's next or how you're going to get from point A to point B, and you can tap into that part of yourself that knows no matter what, that everything is going to be okay, then there's just so much more peace available to us, you know, and we won't be walking around in really a state. A lot of people that I know right now are in kind of a state of panicking or just a lot of fear or worry. And it comes from projecting into the future, you know, what if? And it seems like the deeper that I go in my own journey, my own personal journey, the less I know, which is kind of ironic because you think, you know, you're getting older, you're gaining wisdom, but it just expands out, and there's just even more not to know. And so when you get comfortable with that idea, then it's approaching everything with curiosity. And, well, what if I might be wrong about that and I'm supposed to be doing something different? I can give you an example for myself that happened at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. You know, I've always been an advocate, and for myself personally and my family, everything natural. Everything has to be natural, and, you know, to try to avoid Western medicine, except obviously if you break your leg or you need surgery, it's good to have Western medicine. But I have to do everything naturally. I can heal myself. Everything's good. But I had this persistent issue that kept coming up, and nothing I was trying was working. None of the natural methods. I went to different healers, and it took being in Colorado in a very remote area and almost bleeding to death before I finally said, maybe I'm supposed to have surgery. And it was amazing that once I surrendered to that idea, everything just fell into place. And had the most amazing doctors, and it was incredible. And the freedom that I experienced once I said yes to that, I healed in about twice as fast as the doctor said would be normal. And the journey was incredible. Like what I learned about, you know, doctors that do surgery, and I went to a hospital that I'd heard, you know, it was not a good hospital, and it ended up being better than anything I could have imagined, and had an incredible experience. So now I'm a person who says, and I really mean it, like, do whatever works, whatever is the thing that you're called to do, whatever you feel drawn to do, even if your mind tells you, oh my God, I can't do that, I can't possibly do that. Maybe you can, and maybe it actually would be in the highest for you to do it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's definitely a good example that I just went through.
You know, I have a funny story about that. I broke, because you mentioned breaking some things, I broke this in the elbow in 2009. My dog was having a seizure, and I ran to her and slipped and fell on the laminate flooring and hit my elbow on the edge of the stairs, and it cracked. And my mother was still around at the time, and she goes, well, we should probably take the emergency room. I was like, no, I'm a healer. I can heal it. And so I'm, of course, meditating and running energy through it, and no pain was there until I fell asleep and couldn't, you know, maintain the energy. And so then I woke her up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "Hey, so can we go to the emergency room?" She goes, "Oh, I was just waiting for you." So
Wise mama.
we went and got, of course, it set, and it was just a fracture but the elbow, of course, hurts pretty badly.
Right.
And so I thought to myself that even though you're a healer, I mean, exactly what you're talking about, there was a sole purpose for me to do that, and not to judge anything, including Western medicine, because it has its purpose.
Yes.
And also that even though I am the healer has to accept healing. There's always a give and take. So
Right.
it was interesting. I just thought it was cute to say that because we were talking about broken bones and stuff like that in healing in Western medicine. So
Well, the other thing is it is totally possible to heal that, to heal your broken bone, or to heal, what was going on with me. It's like that is true as well.
yeah.
But the thing that it doesn't take into account, if you just say, well, of course I can heal that, well, maybe the journey of going through what you went through and having it repaired by Western medicine, maybe that's actually what is going to fuel something else in the future that you have no idea about. Well, you're going to ask someone else to go to the doctor for something that they may say, oh, I can heal that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I didn't even need physical therapy. Most people need physical therapy. I didn't need it. I had the cast off in a week. It was where normal people takes 2 or 3 months to finally. I was doing things with it, moving, typing, within about 3 weeks, and it was recovered in like no time at all. Exactly what you're talking about, the healing time, and it's because we let go.
Yeah.
Then we let just whatever happen. So
absolutely.
So I just want to back up really quick because I probably should ask you this in the beginning. How did you get where you're at? Like what got you into this work? Because I know that you didn't live in Arizona to start off with. You moved there from the Northeast.
Yes.
And so, obviously there's a journey to get you where you've gotten. So, how did that all
Well, I've always had kind of a spiritual calling, I guess, and used to call myself a seeker until I realized a few years back that if you're a seeker, then you never really are finding anything. You're always looking.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, it was always about fixing myself. It was like what I was seeking was, there's something wrong with me. I have to figure out what it is and fix it. Right. And there are plenty of people and workshops and things out there that will gladly help you, to figure out, to buy into that paradigm of you're broken and you need fixing. And I tried a lot of them. And then I moved to Arizona. Never in a million years thought I would live in the desert. I'm a total water person, but through my former husband's work, we found ourselves here in Phoenix. And what happened to me 9 years ago, as I look at the trajectory of moving to Phoenix, and then everything opened up. It was quite something. It started with a position that I had with an internet talk radio station as a producer, and I started meeting all these people in the personal development industry, and realized that I was, even though I'd been a relationship coach mostly in the past, that actually business coaching and helping business people market themselves and get their message out there was something I was actually really good at and enjoyed. So it started with that. And then I had an experience working with a spiritual teacher, one of the connections that I made through that position, where it was a huge awakening for me. It started with just kind of going into the old paradigm of the guru. And I was totally unaware that I was doing it at the time, but I gave my power away to this teacher. And slowly, and the reason I went to her was actually to strengthen the core of knowing of who I am. And it's ironic because that is exactly what happened, but it wasn't until we parted ways that actually happened. And through the process of giving my power away to her, and then realizing that I was the only one me and my connection to spirit. That was the only thing that mattered as far as who I am, why I'm here, what I'm doing on the planet, all of my cosmic support team. That connection was really what I finally got. I finally got that it had nothing to do with anyone else. It had to do with me, and had an awakening experience, an actual event that happened when I was up in Sedona, where it's without going into all of the details of it, it was quite profound, where I started seeing things that were beyond this realm and started experiencing beings that were not of the earth, and realized that I, as well as the other earth people, had that same connection. We just don't walk around knowing it, most of us. And it was through that experience that I physically started changing. Some of my friends who have had what's called the walk-in experience, where they literally, their soul changes and part of them leaves and they bring in another aspect of themselves, their higher levels, said that that's actually what happened to me. But it took me a while to realize that I'm actually not the same person that I was. I mean, there's the core of me didn't really change, but how I function in the world and how I felt about other people and my connection to the divine, it just expanded to this amazing thing. And then over the years, different things have opened up. And usually it's when I'm not trying to figure it out. It's usually when I'm relaxed and it comes to me and I pay attention to the little or not so little messages. And I had one experience where I used to always say, all of these, because I had a lot of friends that were psychics or channels or, just spiritual teachers. And I'm like, I don't see what you see. I don't hear what you see. And there was all this comparing. I'm sure you have an experience. Yes. You compare yourself to other people. And it's like, that's so cool. How come I don't get to do that? You kind of look up at spirit and like, hello. And what I kept hearing is that is like the things you're asking for are so minuscule compared to what you're capable of. And not me personally, but all of us, like to ask to be clairvoyant or to ask to hear messages from God. It's like, I would hear my guides like laughing at me about that, because in truth, when you really let go and then you understand that there's this deep knowing that we have access to, and most of us question what that knowing is, that is far beyond any of these parlor tricks that I used to think I wanted to be able to do.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny you should bring that up, because it's that knowing is so much different than anything you could have ever imagined. I mean, it's like that cosmic wisdom, I guess, is the way, or the soul's wisdom. And I know a lot of people, because I did the same thing. I was like, why can they see auras and I can't see auras? Why can they do this and I can't do this? And if I would have just shut up, there was this voice or this feeling that was always just happening. It's not even really a voice. It's hard to you can't really put it in words, I guess is the best way to say it. And so if I would have just shut up and listened, it was there. It just didn't, and so, but you're right, it's a really funny experience. And when you go back and process it, you're like,
yes, our egos are very funny, the way that they like, what about me? I still get that once in a while. I'll meet someone and they've got some really cool gift. I remember the first time I watched this guy grow someone's leg. One was shorter than the other. And I watched him grow the bone. I was like, oh, wow, you can do that? And then I heard, yeah, we all can do that. He's just at a place where he's,
able to do that.
Doing it. I'm like, okay, all right. Can't wait for that one. I
have a friend that can push pencils across the table without touching them. She has that telekinetic thing, and it's her. She likes to do it because she calls it her woo woo. And she goes, you have to do that woo every once in a while because it's fun.
That's funny.
And so we laugh about that a little bit. So
Very cool.
it's interesting because when we talk about all these things that we have, you and I could probably go on about cool stories and things that have happened. And then we have all this demonstration that things are great and things are fine. And then a Mack truck hits us, and or it feels like a Mack truck of life. And then we're like, then we're being tested on if we really believe in what we believe. And I don't think I know we're not alone. I mean, everybody's experiencing this. And, I think it's what you were saying in the beginning. We just have to allow ourselves, to go where like with the surgery and stuff like that. You just have to allow yourself to go where it is you need to go and let go a little bit. But I mean, there is, of course, people getting hit by more than just Mack trucks. They're getting hit by, I like these little analogies I'm coming up with. Mack truck, and there's some people being hit by a Burlington Northern train.
It's funny.
So,
it is true, and it's accelerating right now. You can feel it. You just watch the news, and I mean, it's not like it's new to have, horrible things happening in the world, or perceptibly horrible things happening in the world. But there's like this feeling right now. It's interesting because I meditate every day, and usually with my partner Chris. And when we meditate, often we'll get similar messages, not always, but and it was actually this morning where I started, and it started even before I meditated, where I started like thinking about all these things that have been happening, in the world, but then also personally in my life. And in meditation, I kept hearing, it's a test, but not in the way that you think it is. It's like an example, a few days ago, we were driving back from Las Vegas and we hit this incredible monsoon storm. I mean, it was scary. Luckily, Chris was driving. But, I had checked in with a friend of mine, and she said, don't forget to call in assistance, call in your guides to assist, because there were flash floods predicted. And being from the East Coast, I didn't really understand how serious flash floods were until I moved here. They're pretty, you can definitely be washed away. And so it was that kind, and we were driving out in very desolate areas where, you get a bunch of water on the road and you hydroplane. And so that was happening. And I would call in assistance, and I could see them like clearing the road in front of us, and then it would clear, but then it would come again. And I'm like, hello, can you just clear the path all the way back to Phoenix? Mm-hmm. And then when we hit one area, a town called Wickenburg, and there's a river that runs along the highway there. And it got extreme. The sky, even as we're driving towards it, there was no rain, but we looked ahead, and there was a color I had never seen in the sky before. It was like this very eerie blue, and you could kind of feel like this ominous thing might, happen. And it was extreme rain. But when we got into the town where we were, turning off to go back to Phoenix, the river was like right there. And there were like utility boxes floating down the river, things crashing. It was quite something. And I was scared, and, I was white knuckling it a little bit, and I was like, are you sure we should, go through? There was mud like coming down the road, and Chris is an excellent driver. But I kept hearing, you are going to be fine. This is not something that's going to take you out. So don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. But I could feel the adrenaline was making my heart pump, and it was scary. So when we got past that section of road, everything cleared, and it was fine all the way until Phoenix. So I had some time to recuperate and contemplate what had happened. And what I heard, so I got a few things, about trusting mostly. But what I got in meditation this morning was that it's beyond just trusting. We're all being called to trust more and to understand that we are more than our physical bodies, and especially when it comes to things related to our physical bodies, like there really is nothing to worry about. But because of what is shifting in the world, because of systems breaking apart and things that we depended on, like the banking system, and, that we could have clean water and all of these things that we've depended on, as things are shifting and breaking down, we're being called upon, like, how are we going to react in those emergency situations where all of a sudden there's a big storm and, your house is going to float away? Because that's really the only thing we have control over, ultimately, is how are we going to perceive it and how are we going to view these instances. So that's what I was feeling like. When my heart was racing, I could totally calm it down. I could kind of get myself to rise up above the car and look down at what was really happening and see that we were fine. But if I got back into the car and was like looking in front of me, I'd be like, oh, like white knuckling it. And so that piece, I think, especially when you've been called to lead in whatever way that looks, it could be leading in your family or in, your town or, out in the world, it doesn't matter. When you have that feeling like your people come to you for advice, or then it's even more important right now to understand that we have so much support and we have so much assistance in this time of great change. And we're not alone. We are not alone. And we are more than our human bodies. We are more than what's happening in the moment. There's so much more. And from that place, we then can be an example to others that we come in contact with, who may not have that deeper understanding yet, and maybe just terrified that they can't pay their bills, or that they, someone that they love is sick or is dying, So
It makes a lot of sense. By the way, is that the 2-lane road that goes from Vegas all the way to Phoenix and goes over Hoover Dam?
Yes. Yeah, it was about somewhere just before Hoover Dam that the rain started. That it did not stop until past Wickenburg.
Well, it's so funny because Justin and I stayed there and was at Nevada City. Mm-hmm. And then we drove over Hoover Dam and didn't realize we were on Hoover Dam until we were until we were on the reservation. And my friend Karen says, well, you're on Hoover Dam. I was like, no. I was like, that lake is Hoover Dam? She's like, yeah. So
that's funny.
Pretty funny. But I remember that road is windy and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I prefer it as far as a trek to somewhere far than going to LA. The Route 10 to LA is the most boring road in the world. Vegas isn't so bad.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good example. I mean, you basically not only called on your helpers, your guides, your spiritual helpers. Mm-hmm. And what's kind of cool is that you're actually going through the spiritual lesson as it's happening as well. So, and I think that oftentimes, as we grow spiritually, people like to go into what's wrong with the situation? Why does this keep happening? And nothing was going wrong. You were everything was perfect. You were going through this experience. You were calling upon your helpers, and then you get to process it later.
Yes.
And so I think that it's interesting because I find oftentimes when I go to expos or I go to healers gatherings and all that, or psychic fairs, and people are always like, well, what did you learn in that lesson? I'm like, well, is it really a lesson? It's my opportunity to understand myself better and my relationship to spirit. So
yeah, it's funny, that idea of that everything's a lesson. For me, that almost feels punitive. It's like, you have to learn your lesson or else you're not going to grow spiritually. And I think it's much lighter than that. It's like, life is happening. Are you fully engaged in it? Yeah. Are you fully participating? Are you paying attention? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you growing? Are you happy? Are you being of service in the way that you feel drawn to be of service? Mm-hmm. All of those things are deeper than learning a lesson. You know?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it comes back to what you were talking about too, is we compare ourselves too. And oftentimes we look at things that our people we care about are doing, and we're like, well, how's it they're doing that? And why am I here? You know, and where you're at is perfect. And with the ego, and I haven't found a person on this planet that hasn't done it. And I haven't met the Dalai Lama, but I'm sure that sometimes it happens to him as well. You know, maybe he's mastered it a little bit more than other people. I don't know. But maybe he looks at the Pope and said, why does he have a castle?
That's funny.
That was a joke. But, you know. So,
I think part of it is laughing at yourself. You
absolutely.
know, when your ego does that, it's like, really? Seriously, you're comparing yourself to that person? Like, you're not in their body. You're not going to live their life, and they're not in yours. You know, it's not your path. And I think it's when you're not sure you're doing the right thing, right? Isn't that when you start doubting? It's like, oh, well, if I'm not doing the right thing, well, maybe they have the answer. Maybe I'm supposed to be doing what they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
But when you know that you're at least on the generally right path, whatever right means, but it feels like, okay, this feels like the direction to go in, then you don't worry so much about what other people are doing on their path.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have no idea where you're supposed to be, so to speak, or what you're supposed to be doing, because we're always in the now of the moment. And so, and it's interesting because people think, this is a good question, because when we say the now of the moment, people get kind of tied up in that. They're like, well, shouldn't I have goals? I'm like, no, of course you should have goals, you know, and just don't be so attached to them that if things change that you're knocked over with it, you know.
Right.
And so,
yeah, I think holding them loosely, right?
yeah.
So, you know, it's good to dream and say, oh, wouldn't that be cool if I did this? Or I know that sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience when there's been a few friends, teachers who hold everything so loosely that you can't make a plan with them. You know, it's like, I don't know what I'll be doing. And I'm that way more than I used to be. I used to be very rigid. Like, what do you mean, you know, you don't know what you're going to be doing 2 weeks from now at 5 o'clock? Like, I need to make an appointment with you. But I think that there's a balance there because, you know, we're still in human bodies, and we created things like time and calendars and things like that. So, and I think also it puts it out into the universe that we're taking action in our lives, that we're moving. We're not just sitting waiting for things to happen.
Well, I think that comes down to being grounded and connected as well, balanced, and exactly what you're saying. It's like when I'll give you an example. When you and Jennifer came into town, and it was Jennifer, right?
Yes.
And we had dinner at Acropolis.
Right.
If we wouldn't have set a time, we had more than one. It wasn't just the three of us coming.
No.
You know, we had Carla coming in from another. You know.
I think there was at least a dozen of us sitting around that table.
Quite a few people. And,
yes.
And the only one that had it lucky was Justin. He only had to walk 2 blocks.
And he picked the restaurant, as I remember.
He picked the restaurant. So
smart guy.
He's always got that going on. But I mean, if we wouldn't have coordinated the time, that wouldn't have worked out. And then you guys were teaching that day too, if I remember right.
Yes, we had a class that was going on. Yes.
So I mean, I think that sometimes people get a little bit too much, and I'm one of those people. I'm like, oh, you know, if it's meant to be, it'll be. You know.
Right.
You know, I don't stress about things if things don't happen, you know, that kind of stuff. But obviously by doing radio shows and recording stuff, I have to have some sort of schedule because, you know, otherwise I'll be like, I'll tell you what, when I feel like calling you, I'll call you. And it might be when you're in the middle of your kid's graduation. Yeah, I really can't do it right. Well, just hold up the phone.
Yes. But then there's also, it's interesting because I've really learned this over the past couple of years. One thing that I used to be very attached to, not disappointing people and, you know, keeping my word. But what that does is, and I still, in general, I think as a concept, that is wonderful. Except the one thing that started happening to me, I would say yes to something or, plan on doing something. And then it would be so obvious, so clear that things had shifted and they needed to either cancel or change.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't like that. When you call them up and say, I know we're supposed to have lunch together, tomorrow, but something has shifted and I think we need to reschedule. Mm. And the thing that at first I thought, I'm being wishy-washy, I'm not being responsible, blah, 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 blah. But when I started, and it wasn't just because I didn't feel like it. That's not the same. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't really want to, it's not that. Right. It's something else is calling. Even if it's, I need to take a day off. I need to take time and spend time just myself. And I haven't been taking care of myself. And this is the day, tomorrow is the day to do it. And I need to clear my calendar. And the thing that I started realizing is when you do that, when you really honor yourself and kind of honor a higher calling, it's always right for the other person too. Even if they're disappointed, even if, I don't know about you, but I've so many times people say, oh my God, it was so great that you changed that time or canceled, or even with the client.
Constantly, yes.
And I've changed a time or said, can you meet 2 hours later? And they're like, oh, I'm going to have to move them things around. Thank you so much for changing it. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation. And this ended up having da, 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 da. And I've seen it enough times where now it's like, okay, so just, my ego's idea of what showing up looks like is not necessarily correct,
Well, I think also that comes down to you have to ask. We're so afraid of asking. And what happens too is exactly what you're talking about. I've had so much synchronicity with that where I've called somebody up. I'll give you an example. My vehicle had a mechanical problem. It had to be fixed probably like 2 or 3 months ago. And I was waiting for money to come in because I was doing somebody's social media, but they live in England. So every time they mail the check to me, it takes like 2 weeks to get from, and they didn't like to use PayPal. So, the point is I needed to get it fixed. It was only like a couple days where I had to wait. Well, Carla wanted to meet with me. And I was like, I called her up and I said, I don't think we're going to be able to meet, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get to you. And she was like, oh, I'll just come to your house. And so if I had to call her up, if I would have just called up and said canceled, if I hadn't been forthcoming with her, I wouldn't have given her the opportunity as my friend to say, I'll just come to your house. Well, it's not a big deal. I want to see you. And that was basically, we were going to meet about business, but it was really, she just wanted to see me. And so she came and we sat in my office for a good 3 hours. Just we had maybe 20 minutes of business, and there was another 2 hours and 40 minutes of BSing, which is how I roll anyways. But and so what was so amazing about that is that I kind of really missed an opportunity to connect with my friend, and so I think that soul spirit, and then I got to connect with a lot of people because during the time where I needed to get it fixed, people were picking me up to go to work, and I ended up. This is the funniest story. I went to work and I ended up getting picked up by the bishop of the Neo-Pagan Church for the United States because I was interviewing him. And so I said, well, I know we're doing an interview, but I need you to come and pick me up. And they just happened to be in Tampa at the time. They're like, not a problem. And I was like, and so you just have to ask. And
that's right. And be willing to receive. I think sometimes we don't ask because we're not willing to receive.
Right.
And it's so funny when you say that to people, like, well, how willing are you to receive? Well, I'm willing. But then you look at their actions, or I'll speak for myself. I'll look at my actions. It's like, I don't have any problems receiving. It's like, oh, really? Well, did you even ask for assistance with this or that? And was it because you didn't think that you'd be able to receive it if someone offered?
Yeah. Well, it's funny too about that situation too, because you could, I could have been, if I were asked 10 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, my car's broke down. I don't want them to think that my Mercedes is broke down. I don't have a Mercedes, but you know what I mean? Because in your mind, you want to be bigger than you really are. and the truth is that you just where you're at, and there is no better or worse or anything out there. It's you're just got this idea, and so that blocks your receiving too. And so it's yeah, absolutely. There's times where I forget to ask. I never forget last year I needed some help financially, and I needed to go and talk to somebody and ask them, hey, and I was literally stuttering. I'm like, wait a second, I'm a spiritual teacher. Why am I stuttering? And I remember they stopped and they said, Jared, just spit it out. And I was like, well, and it was because of who it was. Because it was my mother's best friend. Mm-hmm. And I felt, and it was like going to my mom and asking for help, you know? And so, you know, in these things, I don't care how old we get, there's going to be new opportunities. And so, which is cool. I'm excited.
More opportunities for receiving. Yay!
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So we've covered quite a bit here. We've covered, you know, kind of navigating through change and that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, okay. We've covered giving and receiving, that kind of stuff. So that's quite a bit of information. What are some things that you think, you know, during modern times? I mean, like just before we started talking, I went into Facebook, and social media is not even what it was like 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we met. I mean, today when I logged into Facebook, it was all police brutality and, you know, things about race and everything else. And I'm a pretty, a lot of things don't pull on me. Like, I'm pretty grounded when it comes to stuff. But this today, it got to me, and I had to actually meditate for about 10 minutes before I called you to kind of get myself back in balance. And, you know, I'm aware of these kind of things, so I can immediately say, well, I need to sit down before I call Sherryl and get myself in balance. However, not everybody knows that. And so I say, if you're feeling that, just sit your butt down and go and relax. But what are some things that you would do or you're doing too?
It's actually kind of what I was talking about, what I started seeing in meditation this morning, that, you know, it is getting more intense. You know, the unrest in the world is getting more intense, and it's causing people to be a lot more fearful and react out of fear instead of saying, well, what is it that I'm being called to do? I think one of the things that happens, and it happens to me too, is you can get overwhelmed. You start feeling like everything is falling apart, whether it's in your personal life or in the world at large. And I think the most important thing is to really know what your piece is. Like, what you're not going to solve world hunger and world peace and climate change. And like, one person is not going to do all of that. Mm-hmm. But I think we each have certain skill sets that we come in with, certain passions that we come to this earth with. And the more you can get in touch with what those are, and it might be something so simple, like, I know that when I go out into the world and I have a conversation with the clerk at the grocery store or someone in the line at the bank, that I seem to be able to brighten people's day. Now, that might not seem like a lot for someone. It's like, well, how is that changing the world? You know? But if that's what you're meant to do, and if that is like part of who you are and why you came here, then you can't not do it, first of all. And going and trying to search for some big something that you're supposed to be doing instead takes you away from realizing that you're actually already doing it. Mm-hmm. You're already doing what you're called to do. You know, I know for me, being a spiritual teacher, which, you know, part of me hates that term. It's like, I just share what my experiences are with others and assist them in that way. Or being an energy healer. It's like, am I really even doing the healing? It's like I'm a conduit so that people can experience healing and wholeness in themselves, right?
Right.
And those are things that I am called to do. And when I'm doing them, I feel like all is right with the world. When I start trying to like, well, I should really get into, you know, animal rights activism because I love animals, and I should really get into and people ask me all the time, you know, and they, you know, when you're more out in the public, you get asked to assist with different things. And it's like, well, is that is there anything wrong with saying no to certain things?
Mhm.
Really? Because otherwise you start feeling like there's not enough of you to go around. And it's true, there isn't, because you're not meant to do everything. You're not meant to solve all the problems. So when you're looking at the news or seeing Facebook posts, what I'm starting to do, I have to do it, because when something comes across my path, it's like, is there something for me personally to do about this? Is there something I can do? And sometimes the answer is no. That's just, don't participate in it if it's something that would contribute to evil.
Mhm.
Get the word out about it if it's something that there's someone else that might be able to assist. But I think that's a really good skill set that we really need to develop right now. And it's not about having I'm not going to get sucked in by all of what's going on. I think for me anyway, it's important to know and not to be ignorant and walk around thinking that, oh, well, everything's fine in my little house here. It's like just knowing what your purpose is. And if you don't know some big thing, maybe it's not so big. Maybe you're not meant to, be a big activist, changing things and being filmed on TV,
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then I think on a smaller, more individual scale, I think we have to have a lot of tenderness for ourselves right now. There's, when you start tapping into the pain in the world, and if you're at all sensitive, there's a tendency to want to shut down and to shut the world out. And you could do that with drugs or alcohol or, food or spacing out in front of TV, or there's a million ways to do it. And what it does is it pushes the anxiety down into you. So it's still there, but you're pretending it's not.
Yeah.
And so the more that you can say, wow, I'm feeling the pain of the world today. Be like, I think I need to do something nice for myself, and, maybe gather with some friends or spend some time by myself, or take a walk in nature, or pray or meditate, or whatever you're called to do. I think being gentle with ourselves in this time and each other, and realizing that I know sometimes when I see how, the hate that people are spewing back and forth, well, that's wrong, and that he should be killed, put to death for doing that. And that's like, we don't realize we're actually contributing it to it when we get into that mode. And, instead say, wow, bless his soul or her soul, like he doesn't realize what it is that he's doing and how he or she is affecting himself and everyone that he comes in contact with. And the more we can do that and have compassion for our fellow humanity, it's like we don't know the person's story that ends up shooting a bunch of people. We don't know the pain that they've experienced in their lives that might have led them to that point.
Right.
So,
do you think too that certain things that happen in life, even if they're so heinous to us, that they are catalysts for change? Like, we don't know on a super consciousness level what's happening. I mean, we're living these individual aspects of our lives, and yes, we're all interconnected, but I mean, I hate to bring up such a horrible time, but 9/11 was a big catalyst for change in our country. And
I had an epiphany after, when they, I don't know whether it was a video I saw or something, but, it was probably on Facebook, when bin Laden was killed, and there were people celebrating that he had died. And there was something about that really bothered me, like U.S. citizens like, yeah, we finally got him, yeah. And I'm like, wow, we're celebrating a human life ending. And it was weird because, knowing that he'd been responsible for so many other lives ending. And I thought, wow, there's something in there. There's something, and I just asked. I said, what, why did that happen? Why did he do that? Why did we, hunt him down? What was that really about? And what I got was that before he came here, he agreed to be one of the most hated humans on earth so that we could wake up and shift. I'm getting goosebumps just saying it.
Wow.
And throughout history, there had been those brave souls who had been willing to do that. Hitler, Mussolini, and just all these brave souls. Because if you subscribe to the fact that we just don't have one life and that's it, we've all lived many, 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 many lifetimes where we've been the persecutor and the persecuted, and where we've been the victim and the one that's killed and maimed people. We've done all of it. We've been all of it. We are part of creating the world that we live in. And so from that bigger perspective, it's like, well, we must have let things get pretty off center, that we needed that big of a slap in the face, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that the world is so asleep that we've allowed ourselves to go to sleep so deeply that we need someone to slap us around to wake us up.
What do you think there are some things that maybe we're not talking about, because we got a few more minutes here, that we could share with the people watching this that could maybe help them in their lives right now, that maybe they don't get on an everyday basis?
I mean, we've covered a little bit about, it's not, I just want to say, I just keep hearing, it's not what they think. It's not what we think.
Mm-hmm.
That our human mind has such a narrow capacity for understanding the depths of who we are, why we're here, the expanded universe, and how everything is connected and interconnected, and that we are infinite beings. And when we know that, then, I don't know, for me, even just saying it out loud just now, I'm like, it's just like there's kind of a relief. There's just a feeling of, people use the word oneness a lot and mean different things when they say it. But it's like an interconnectedness and a rightness where you know that you're part of something way bigger than this day-to-day existence that we have here on Earth. And when you tap into that, and you can do it, like I meditate. For years I had a very formal meditation practice. My dad took my brother and I to the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Center and learned transcendental meditation when I was 13. And I did that for years. And then at a certain point, it morphed into just the way I do it. It's just connecting to a higher wisdom, whatever that is for you. And for some people, you don't need to sit cross-legged on the floor. For some people, it works better to just go out for a walk and commune in nature. But if you take the time to just spend some time connecting to that thing, whatever it is that your belief system is, that thing that is beyond you, that is beyond here, if you take some time to connect with that each day, then you will get shown more and more of the truth of the reality of who you are and why you're here. My friend Jennifer had, I took a class with her years ago, and she had us do this post-it and post them all over our house. Who am I really is the question. And I tell you, if you post that around your house, you have to be ready for the answer. Because, if you think your identity is all the things that, society calls you, your parents call you, you've labeled yourself, the things that you've said you are, like a parent and a teacher and a this and a that. It's like, so it's just That's just what's happening in your life on the earth right now. This has nothing to do with really who we are, ultimately. Yeah. So,
absolutely. I think that's such a that's a whole other topic. It's an amazing topic about how we're unlimited beings and infinite potential. And I think I think in some ways that's the hardest subject for people to grasp onto. And and I don't know if you'll agree, but unless you have had an experience that takes you there, which is not really a there, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, and when you've had that experience, you get it. You're like, this is not something I can really put words on.
It's true. And I know, like, my former husband, he went to seminary and had a formal religious education, but ended up not being ordained because he wasn't sure he believed in God after he learned all the different religions, and like, that doesn't make sense. And we used to have these lively discussions about religion and the existence of God, and he would try and convince me that it made no sense that there was a God and blah blah blah. And I finally said, you know what, there's really nothing you can say that's gonna, like, you're not gonna convince me that there's no God or that you're right. It's not about that. But I've actually had a personal experience of it. And the only thing I can say to you is that my greatest wish for you is that you have a personal experience, because then it won't matter anymore. You won't need to prove it. You won't need to. It just is and is at that point. And I think that it's funny because I've had discussions with people where they say, it's like, I want to believe, like, it makes sense, and I kind of feel like there's something there, but I don't know for sure, and I wish I knew. And that's definitely a start, because at least you're open to receiving that knowing. But I think there's a certain level of, it's almost like surrendering to your higher wisdom. So that when you're getting these little feelings, or you hear something like in your head, like, don't be so quick to think you're just making it up, or that you're imagining it, or that it's just it's just you talking to yourself. Like, suspend that belief system for just a moment and say, well, maybe that could be true, that I'm actually getting a message from Spirit. Maybe it could be true that that coincidence was actually not a coincidence. It was all divinely guided. Maybe and when you start doing that and allowing yourself to open to the possibilities that the miracles actually do exist and they're totally normal, then you get more of them. And it starts creating this flow where anything is possible. Totally anything is possible.
Absolutely.
And the more especially the more recently, the more I open to that way of being in the energy healing work that I'm doing, it's like I get shown something even more. It's like, oh, wow, we are amazing beings. We can, like, shift and transform, and our cells can move around, and we can reverse disease, and it's like we totally are capable of it all. It's incredible. I feel very privileged to have somehow, some way, got the bonk on the head, like, okay, stop questioning and just trust.
Yeah, I call it the cosmic 2x4 upside the head.
Yep. Got a few of those in my life.
So how do they get a hold of you for healing, and do you do distance healing work with people?
Absolutely. If you'd like, you can go to my website. It's called thecosmicconduit.com. And you'll see my contact information there. That's probably the easiest way. I also have a pretty active Facebook page. My main page is my name, which I won't spell out on this, but it's Sherryl Frauenglass. And it's Sherryl Frauenglass True Voice, and that's my main page. But I also have a new page that matches my website called The Cosmic Conduit, so you can look those two up on Facebook. And I definitely do distance healing. It's funny because some people are like, how is that possible? Especially if they've had an in-person session with me and they've had my hands on them, they're like, I can't see how that would work. But again, because we're multidimensional, infinite beings, it doesn't really matter. We can tap into the energy field no matter where you are. And I have clients that are all over the world and have very profound sessions, and it's quite wonderful. So
absolutely. Well, I actually find that doing my sessions over sessions, healing sessions like this, I prefer them over Skype and through webcams. I don't know why I do. Maybe it's because I can have my blanket on underneath my legs and I can relax, And,
yes.
Maybe I'll change my website to the Lazy Healer.
That's perfect. I actually kind of like that. I wouldn't say that was a bad idea. From
I'm always from a marketing's perspective.
It would make you stand out.
It certainly would. You're always going to have fun with it. So.
A picture of you. I see a logo with you in a recliner with your feet up.
I started that way because I used to do classes through WebEx, and for a company I work for, and I would sometimes do them at home. And so I would have like the shirt and the tie on with a pair of shorts on. And of course they never knew that the shorts were on because they just saw the shirt and the tie. And I would be wearing flip-flops or be comfortable in my office in my house. And everybody would be like, "You really do that?" I'm like, "Yeah."
That's awesome. Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate you coming on and taking the time to share your wisdom with everybody.
And
very much appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me to join you. I think we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and and here we are communing, and we always have such great conversations one-on-one, and now we got to do it in front of people. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
So everything always happens when it's supposed to.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.